I locked the door. And my heart.
The anniversary dinner was supposed to be perfect. 22 years of marriage, and Lena had insisted on the private dining room at Romano's, the kind of place where they charge you $50 for a steak and act like they're doing you a favor. I should have known something was wrong when she ordered the most expensive wine on the menu without even glancing at the price. "Nathan," she said, swirling her third glass of Bordeaux, her perfectly manicured fingers catching the candlelight. "We need to talk." I set down my fork. The ribeyes suddenly tasted like cardboard. "About what?" She leaned back in her chair, and I noticed how her designer dress hugged her curves just right. At 41, Lena still turned heads, and she knew it. Her auburn hair was pulled back in that sophisticated way that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment at her fancy salon downtown. "I'm not your property, Nathan. I never was." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I kept my expression neutral. 22 years of marriage teaches you to read the room. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm opening our marriage. Before I could process what she'd just said, the private dining room door opened. In walked Eddie Torino, my best friend since high school, wearing a crap-eating grin and a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. His dark hair was slicked back, and he moved with the confidence of a man who thought he owned the world. "Hey there, Nate," Eddie said, not bothering to sit down. "Hope you don't mind me crashing your little party." Lena stood up, smoothed her dress, and walked over to Eddie. Without a word, she grabbed his face and planted a kiss on him that would have made a porn star blush. Her tongue was practically down his throat, and she made sure I got a front row seat to the whole show. When they finally came up for air, she turned to me with a smile that could have frozen stone over. "I'm leaving with Eddie now," she said, grabbing her purse. "Don't wait up." And just like that, they were gone, leaving me alone with 2 half-eaten steaks and a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's rent. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, staring at the empty chairs, before I started laughing. Not the kind of laugh you hear at comedy shows, but the kind that comes when your whole world just got turned upside down, and you're not sure if you want to cry or burn everything to the ground. The waiter, a skinny kid who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, poked his head in. "Everything all right, sir?" "Just peachy," I said, raising my glass. "My wife just announced she's screwing my best friend. How's your night going?" The kid's face went white, and he mumbled something about the check before disappearing. I drove home in my beat-up Ford pickup, the same truck I'd been driving for 8 years, because Lena always said we needed to invest in her career instead of getting me something reliable. The radio was playing some sappy love song, so I turned it off and drove in silence through the streets of our little corner of upstate New York. Our house sat on Maple Street, a modest 2-story colonial that I'd bought back when I still believed in happily ever after. The mortgage was in both our names, but I'd made every payment for the past 15 years, while Lena climbed the corporate ladder at her PR firm downtown. I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment, looking at the house we'd called home. The porch light was on, casting shadows across the front yard I'd mowed every weekend for 2 decades. The flower beds Lena had insisted on were perfectly maintained, because God forbid the neighbors think we weren't living the American dream. Inside, I went straight to the kitchen and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. The good stuff, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. Well, this was special, all right. I called my locksmith buddy, Tony, who owed me a favor from when I'd fixed his transmission for free. "Tony, it's Nate. I need you to come change my locks, tonight." "Jesus, Nate, it's almost 11. What's the emergency?" "My wife just announced she's screwing around. I want her stuff on the lawn and the locks changed before she gets back." Tony was quiet for a second. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. While I waited, I started gathering Lena's things. Her expensive clothes, her collection of self-help books, her yoga mats, all the crap she'd accumulated over the years. I wasn't angry yet, just methodical, like I was dismantling an engine, piece by piece. Tony showed up with his toolbox and didn't ask questions. Good man. While he worked on the locks, I kept piling Lena's belongings on the front lawn. The neighbors' lights started coming on, but I didn't care. Let them watch. By morning, the whole street would know that Nathan Pierce wasn't the pushover everyone thought he was. My phone started buzzing around midnight. Lena. "Nathan, What the heck do you think you're doing? Slashing house, cleaning house, I said, taking another sip of bourbon. Your stuff's on the lawn. Locks are changed. Don't bother coming home. You can't just kick me out. This is my house too. Patient. Was your house. Past tense. You made your choice, sweetheart. Live with it. I hung up and turned off my phone. By 1 a.m., Tony had finished the locks and helped me move the rest of Lena's things outside. Her BMW pulled up just as we were carrying out her antique dresser, the one she'd inherited from her grandmother. She jumped out of the car, still in that expensive dress. But now, she looked like she'd been through a blender. Her hair was messed up, her lipstick was smeared, and she had that wild look in her eyes that meant she was about to lose her crap. Nathan, you bastard! You can't do this! Eddie got out of the driver's side, trying to look tough in his fancy suit. Come on, man, this is crazy. Let's talk about this like adults. I looked at Eddie, this guy I'd known since we were 17, who'd been the best man at my wedding, who'd eaten Sunday dinner at my table for 20 years. Adults? You want to talk like adults? Adults don't screw their best friend's wife behind his back. It's not like that, Eddie said, but his voice cracked like he was going through puberty again. Really? What's it like then? True love? You gonna marry her, Eddie? Take care of her when she's old and gray? Lena stepped between us. This is between you and me, Nathan. No, it's not. Not anymore. You brought him into this when you decided to tongue wrestle him in front of me at dinner. Trespass Tony cleared his throat. I'm going to head out, Nate. Call me if you need anything else. After Tony left, the three of us stood there in the driveway like some twisted version of a Mexican standoff. The porch light cast long shadows across Lena's scattered belongings, and I could see curtains twitching in the neighbors' windows. Where am I supposed to go? Lena asked, and for the first time that night, she sounded less like a woman in control and more like someone who just realized she'd made a terrible mistake. That's your problem now, I said. You're a grown woman with a job and a boyfriend. Figure it out. Eddie put his arm around her shoulders. She can stay at my place. How generous of you, I said. The knight in shining armor routine really suits you. I turned to go back inside, but Lena grabbed my arm. Nathan, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can... I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. Work what out, Lena? You just told me you're opening our marriage. You kissed another man in front of me. What exactly do you think we're going to work out? I made a mistake. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking clearly enough to plan this whole thing. The private dining room, the expensive wine, making sure Eddie showed up at just the right moment. This wasn't a mistake, Lena. This was a performance. She let go of my arm and stepped back. Fine, but this isn't over, Nathan. I have rights. I'm entitled to half of everything. Shall see about that, I said, and went inside. Through the window, I watched them load her stuff into Eddie's BMW. It took 3 trips, and by the time they were done, it was almost 3 in the morning. The whole neighborhood had gotten a show, and I knew by tomorrow, everyone would be talking about it. I sat in my recliner with the bourbon bottle, looking around the house that was finally quiet. For the first time in years, I could actually think. No Lena chattering about her coworkers. No reality TV blaring from the kitchen. No constant criticism about how I loaded the dishwasher or folded the laundry. Just silence. And in that silence, I started planning. The next morning came too early, and with a headache that felt like someone was using my skull for drum practice. I'd fallen asleep in the recliner, still wearing my good shirt from dinner, now wrinkled and smelling like bourbon and regret. My phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Lena, ranging from apologetic to furious to downright threatening. A few were from our daughter Jessica, who was away at college in Albany. She'd obviously heard the news. Dad, what the heck happened? Mom called me crying at 3 a.m. I called her back while I made coffee in the blessed quiet of my kitchen. Hey, Jess. Dad, Mom says you threw her out of the house. She says you've lost your mind. Jessica was 19. Studying business at SUNY, I called her out there with a lot of terms of community. I concluded to the new president. I thought of 1,200 of 10%, and she had her mother's talent for making everything sound like it was somehow my fault. She also had Lena's looks, the same auburn hair, the same green eyes, the same way of tilting her head when she was about to lecture you. Your mother decided she wanted to see other people, I said, keeping my voice steady. So I helped her with that decision. She said you wouldn't even talk to her. She said you just started throwing her stuff on the lawn like some crazy person. Did she tell you about Eddie? Silence. Did she mention that she's been sleeping with Uncle Eddie? We'd always called him Uncle Eddie, even though he wasn't family. He'd been around so long, at every birthday party and holiday dinner, that Jessica had grown up thinking of him as a relative. That's not true, Jessica said, but her voice had lost its edge. She kissed him right in front of me last night, sweetheart, at our anniversary dinner. Then she announced she was leaving with him. I'm coming home, she said finally. You don't need to do that. You've got classes. I'm coming home, Dad, this weekend. After she hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and started making lists. 22 years of marriage leaves you with a lot of shared responsibilities, and I needed to figure out what was mine, what was hers, and what was going to be a fight. The house was in both our names, but I'd made every mortgage payment. The cars were separate. Her BMW was hers, my truck was mine. Bank accounts were joint, but I've been the only one putting money into them for the past 5 years, while Lena spent everything she made on clothes and spa treatments. My phone rang. Eddie. Nate, we need to talk. No, we don't. Come on, man. Don't be like this. We've been friends for 25 years. We're friends. Past tense. Look, I know you're pissed, but this thing with Lena, it just happened. We didn't plan it. I almost laughed. It just happened? You just accidentally showed up at our anniversary dinner? You just accidentally kissed my wife? It's complicated, okay? Lena's been unhappy for a long time. She needed someone to talk to. And you decided to be a good listener with your Johnson? Jesus, Nate, you don't have to be crude about it. Crude? You want to see crude? Keep calling me. I hung up and turned off my phone. By noon, I'd made appointments with a divorce lawyer and my accountant. I'd also called my boss at the garage and told him I needed a few days off. Mike understood. His own wife had run off with an insurance salesman 3 years ago, so he knew the drill. The divorce lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Hendricks, had an office downtown, 3 blocks from Lena's PR firm. I'd chosen her specifically because she had a reputation for being ruthless. And right now, ruthless sounded perfect. Mr. Pierce, she said, looking over the paperwork I'd brought. How long have you suspected your wife was having an affair? I didn't suspect anything. She announced it at dinner last night. Patricia raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. Most people try to hide infidelity, not announce it. My wife's not most people. She's got a flair for the dramatic. And you're certain about the identity of the other party? Eddie Torino. He's been my best friend since high school. Was my best man. Eats at my table every Sunday. I paused. Or he did. Pa made notes. Any children? 1 daughter, 19, in college. But here's the thing. I leaned forward. I had a vasectomy 7 years ago. Lena doesn't know. Pen stopped moving. Excuse me? I had it done after Lena said she wanted another baby. I wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility again, but I didn't want to fight about it. So I had the procedure done and never told her. Mr. Pierce, that's a significant piece of information. If your wife becomes pregnant during this affair, then we'll know it's not mine. Patricia smiled for the first time since I'd walked into her office. Mr. Pierce, I think we're going to work very well together. I spent the rest of the afternoon moving money around. Not hiding it, just making sure Lena couldn't clean out our accounts while I was sleeping. I transferred half of everything into a new account in my name only, which was perfectly legal according to Patricia. That evening, I drove over to Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar on the south side where I'd been drinking beer and shooting pool since I was old enough to get served. The owner, Danny Murphy, was a Vietnam vet who'd seen enough drama in his 70 years that nothing surprised him anymore. Heard you had some excitement last night, Danny said, sliding a beer across the bar. News travels fast. Your neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, was in here an hour ago. Said it looked like a yard sale exploded on your lawn. I took a long drink. Lena decided she wanted to explore her options. With Eddie Torino? You heard that too? Danny shrugged. Small town, Nate. People talk. The bar was mostly empty except for a few regulars watching the Yankees game on the TV above the bar. I found a corner booth and tried to think through my next moves. Lena would file for divorce, that was certain. She'd want half the house, half my retirement, probably alimony too. But she'd have to explain why she wanted the divorce, and adultery wasn't going to look good to a judge. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Sarah from Lena's office. Call me. It's important. Sarah Chen was Lena's assistant, a quiet woman in her 30s who'd always been polite when I'd called the office. I stepped outside to call her back. Mr. Pierce, thank you for calling me back. I thought you should know that everyone here is talking about what happened last night. I figured they would be. No, you don't understand. Lena came in this morning and told everyone that you had a breakdown. She said you threatened her and Eddie, and that she had to leave for her own safety. I felt my jaw clench. Is that right? She's telling people that you're unstable, that you've been drinking and making threats. She showed everyone pictures of her stuff on your lawn, and said you destroyed some of her things. Did I destroy anything? I don't know, but that's not why I'm calling. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. Mr. Pierce, Lena and Mr. Torino have been meeting here after hours for months, in her office. The cleaning crew has complained about the mess they leave behind. What kind of mess? Use your imagination. I was quiet for a moment, processing this. Sarah, why are you telling me this? Because Lena's been treating me like garbage for 2 years. She makes me work late, she takes credit for my ideas, and she talks to me like I'm stupid. And because what she's doing to you isn't right. Would you be willing to write down what you just told me? If you need me to, yes. After I hung up, I sat in my truck in Murphy's parking lot and felt something shift inside me. For 24 hours, I'd been reacting to what Lena and Eddie had done to me. But now I was starting to think about what I could do to them. I drove home and spent the evening making more lists. Not just financial lists this time, but lists of people who knew Lena and Eddie. People who might have seen them together. People who might have information I could use. By the time I went to bed, in my own house, with the locks changed, I wasn't just angry anymore. I was motivated. And motivation, I was learning, was a dangerous thing. Friday morning brought Jessica home from college, and she looked like heck. Her eyes were red from crying. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing the same clothes she'd probably slept in. She stood on my front porch with a duffel bag, looking lost. Hey, kiddo, I said, opening the door. She fell into my arms and started crying again. Dad, what's happening to our family? I held her while she sobbed, and for the first time since Tuesday night, I felt something other than anger. I felt protective. Jessica didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this mess. Come on inside. I'll make you some breakfast. Dismantle while I scrambled eggs and made toast. Jessica sat at the kitchen table and told me about her conversation with Lena. Mom called me Wednesday night, crying. She said you'd gone crazy, that you'd threatened her and Uncle Eddie. She said she was scared of you. What do you think? I asked, setting a plate in front of her. Jessica looked at me, really looked at me. I was showered and shaved, wearing clean clothes, making her breakfast in a clean kitchen. Not exactly the picture of a man who'd lost his mind. You don't look crazy, she said quietly. I'm not crazy. I'm hurt, and I'm angry, but I'm not crazy. Mom said you threw all her stuff on the lawn. I did. Why? I sat down across from her with my own plate. Because she told me she was opening our marriage. Then she kissed another man in front of me. Because she chose to humiliate me in the worst way possible. Because after 22 years of marriage, she decided I wasn't worth even a conversation before she decided to blow up our family. Jessica picked at her eggs. She said it wasn't like that. What did she say it was like? She said you two had grown apart, that you hadn't been happy for years, that she needed to find herself. Did she mention that the man she's finding herself with is Eddie? Jessica nodded miserably. And how does that make you feel? Sick, she said immediately. Uncle Eddie used to give me piggyback rides when I was little. He taught me how to drive stick shift in the school parking lot. And now he's sleeping with your mother. God, Dad, don't say it like that. Why not? That's what's happening. Your mother is sleeping with a man who's known you since you were born. A man who sat at our dinner table every Sunday for 20 years. Jessica pushed her plate away. I can't eat. You need to eat something. I can't stop thinking about it. About them together. It's disgusting. I reached across the table and took her hand. I know it is. But you're going to have to decide who you believe. Your mother's version of events, or what you see with your own eyes. That afternoon, while Jessica napped upstairs in her old room, I met with Patricia Hendricks again. I'd brought copies of all our financial records, and she was impressed with how organized I'd been. Most men don't keep such detailed records, she said. I'm not most men. I've been managing our finances for 15 years, while Lena spent money like it grew on trees. Spread the documents across her conference table. This is very good for you, Mr. Pierce. You can document every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every major purchase. If your wife tries to claim she contributed equally to the household, we can disprove that easily. Resisting. Interceptions. What about the house? Legally, she owns half. But given that you've made all the payments and she's the one who committed adultery, we might be able to negotiate a buyout rather than a forced sale. Assaulting. And if she gets pregnant? Prophria smiled that predatory smile again. If she gets pregnant and you can prove the child isn't yours through your vasectomy, it becomes evidence of ongoing adultery. That changes everything. Sexism. I left the lawyer's office feeling better than I had in days. For the first time, I felt like I had some control over the situation. But control, I was learning, was intoxicating. That evening, Jessica and I ordered pizza and watched a movie, trying to pretend everything was normal. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Lena. I want to see Jessica. She's here if she wants to talk to you. Shameful. I mean, in person. I want to take her to dinner tomorrow. I looked at Jessica, who was shaking her head frantically. She doesn't want to see you right now, Lena. She's my daughter too, Nathan. You can't keep her from me. Marshall. I'm not keeping her from you. She's 19 years old. She can make her own decisions. Put her on the phone. I held out the phone to Jessica. She took it reluctantly. Hi, Mom. No, I don't want to have dinner. Because I need time to think. No, Dad didn't tell me what to think. Mom, please don't cry. I just need some time. She hung up and handed me the phone back. She's staying at Uncle Eddie's apartment, Jessica said. She wanted me to know that they're in love, and that this isn't just some fling. How do you feel about that? Like I want to throw up. Saturday. Morning, I woke up with a plan. While Jessica slept in, I drove downtown to Eddie's apartment building. It was one of those new high-rise places with a doorman and underground parking. The kind of place that cost more per month than most people made. I didn't go inside. Instead, I sat in my truck across the street and watched. At 10:30, Eddie came out wearing workout clothes and got into his BMW. 20 minutes later, Lena came out wearing a sundress I'd bought her for her birthday last year. She got into her own BMW and drove off in the opposite direction. I followed Eddie. He drove to an expensive gym downtown, the kind with personal trainers and juice bars. I parked where I could watch the entrance and waited. While I waited, I made phone calls. The first call was to my buddy Rick, who worked at the BMW dealership where Eddie had bought his car. Rick, it's Nate Pierce. I need a favor. Sure, Nate, what's up? You remember my friend Eddie Torino? Bought a black 7 Series from you guys last year? Yeah, I remember Eddie. Nice car. What about him? He's been having some brake problems. Pedal's been feeling spongy. I told him I'd look at it, but I need to know what kind of brake system he's got. Rick was quiet for a moment. Nate, you know I can't give out customer information. I'm not asking for his address, Rick. I just need to know about his brakes. The guy's my best friend, and I'm worried about him. It was only half a lie. I was worried about Eddie. Worried that he was going to get away with what he'd done. Rick gave me the information I needed, and I made my second phone call. This one was to Tony, my locksmith buddy who also happened to know his way around cars. Tony, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to make a car's brakes fail temporarily, not enough to cause a serious accident, just enough to cause a minor fender bender, how would they do that? Jesus, Nate. What are you planning? I'm sure. I was nice to come a Rick. What was the worst that I would? Unless they what? Are you planning? Nothing permanent. I just want someone to have a bad day. Tony was quiet for a long moment. Hypothetically, you could loosen the brake line fittings. Not enough to cause a complete failure, but enough to reduce brake pressure significantly. The car would still stop, but it would take a lot longer and the pedal would go almost to the floor. And this would be temporary? Yeah, the fluid would leak out gradually. After a few hours of driving, the brakes would be pretty much useless, but it would start as just reduced braking power. Thanks, Tony. Nate, whatever you're thinking of doing, don't do it. But I'd already hung up. Eddie spent 2 hours at the gym. When he came out, sweaty and looking pleased with himself, I followed him to a coffee shop where he met with two men I didn't recognize. They looked like the kind of guys who solved problems with their fists, and they talked to Eddie like he owed them something. Interesting. I followed Eddie back to his apartment building and watched him park in the underground garage. The garage had security cameras, but it also had a lot of blind spots. I'd done electrical work in buildings like this before, and I knew how these places were laid out. That afternoon, I took Jessica out for lunch and tried to act normal. But my mind kept wandering to Eddie's car, to brake lines, to the conversation I'd overheard between Eddie and those two men. "Dad, you're not listening to me," Jessica said. "Sorry, kiddo. What were you saying?" I said Mom called again. She wants to meet with both of us tomorrow. She says she has something important to tell us. What do you think? I think I'm tired of being in the middle of this. I think I want to go back to school and pretend none of this is happening. You can do that if you want, but running away won't make it go away. I'm not running away. I need normal, Dad. I need my classes and my friends and my stupid part-time job at the bookstore. I need things that make sense. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Okay, you go back to school, but promise me you'll call if you need anything. And promise me you won't let your mother manipulate you. What do you mean? I mean, she's going to try to make this my fault. She's going to tell you that I'm the bad guy, that I drove her away, that I'm being unreasonable. And maybe some of that's true. But don't forget what you saw with your own eyes. That night, after Jessica had gone to bed, I sat in my garage and thought about brake lines. I thought about Eddie's smug face, about Lena's performance at the restaurant, about 22 years of marriage flushed down the drain. And I thought about justice. Not the legal kind that would take months and cost thousands of dollars. The immediate kind. The satisfying kind. The kind that would make Eddie understand that actions have consequences. Sunday morning, Jessica packed her bag and got ready to drive back to Albany. She looked better than she had on Friday. More rested, less fragile. But I could see the sadness in her eyes. "Are you going to be okay, Dad?" "I'll be fine, kiddo. You worry about your classes." I hugged her goodbye and promised, even though I'd already decided that stupid was a relative term. After Jessica left, I drove downtown to Eddie's building. It was Sunday morning, so the underground garage would be mostly empty. I'd brought my toolbox and wore coveralls that made me look like a maintenance worker. Getting into the garage was easier than I'd expected. The security door had a keypad, but it also had a service entrance that was propped open for the cleaning crew. I walked in like I belonged there and found Eddie's BMW parked in spot 247. The brake lines were exactly where Tony had said they'd be. I loosened the fittings just enough to create a slow leak, not enough to cause immediate failure, but enough to reduce brake pressure over time. By the time Eddie drove across town and back, his brakes would be spongy. By the time he tried to stop at a busy intersection, they'd be nearly useless. I wasn't trying to end him. I just wanted him to have a very bad day. I was under the car, tightening the fittings back up just enough to slow the leak, when I heard voices. Two men, talking in low, angry voices. "Eddie better have our money by Wednesday or we're going to have a problem. He keeps saying his girlfriend's going to give him access to her husband's accounts. Yeah, well, his girlfriend better hurry up. The boss is getting impatient." I stayed perfectly still under the BMW until they walked away. Then I finished my work and got out of there as quickly as possible. So, Eddie owed money to some very unfriendly people, and he thought Lena was going to help him get it from our joint accounts. That was interesting information. I drove home and spent the afternoon cleaning my garage and trying not to think about what I'd just done. Around 4 o'clock, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Pierce, this is Dr. Martinez at St. Mary's Hospital. Your friend Eddie Torino has been in an accident. He asked us to call you. Is he okay? He's stable. He has a concussion and some bruised ribs, but nothing life-threatening. He rear-ended another car at the intersection of Main and 5th. He keeps saying his brakes failed. The hospital from my house. I found Eddie in the emergency room, lying on a gurney with a bandage on his forehead and an ice pack on his ribs. He looked like heck, and for a moment, I almost felt guilty. Almost. Nate, he said when he saw me. Thank God you're here. What happened? My brakes failed. I was coming up to the light at Main and 5th, and I pressed the brake pedal, and it went right to the floor. I couldn't stop. That's terrible. Is the other driver okay? Yeah, just shaken up. But Nate, this wasn't an accident. Someone messed with my car. I kept my expression neutral. Why would you think that? Because I just had the car serviced last month. The brakes were fine. And because he looked around to make sure no one was listening. Because I owe some money to some people who aren't very patient. What kind of people? The kind who break legs when you don't pay on time. Jesus, Eddie, what have you gotten yourself into? It's complicated. I made some bad investments, and I needed cash fast. These guys loan money, but their interest rates are aggressive. How much do you owe them? 50 grand. I whistled low. That's a lot of money. I know, but I've got a plan to get it. Lena's going to help me. How's Lena going to help you? Eddie looked uncomfortable. She's got access to your joint accounts, right? She's going to transfer some money to help me out. I felt my jaw clench. She's going to steal my money to pay your gambling debts? It's not stealing. She's entitled to half of everything anyway, right? This way, we just get access to it a little early. I stared at him for a long moment. This man I'd known for 25 years, who'd been like a brother to me, was planning to steal my money to pay off loan sharks, and he was using my wife to do it. Where's Lena now? I asked. She went to get me some clothes from the apartment. The paramedics cut up my shirt. Eddie, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Okay. How long have you been sleeping with my wife? Eddie's face went pale under the bandage. Nate, it's not what you think. How long? 6 months, maybe 7. And this thing with the money? Was that always part of the plan? No, that's separate. I got in trouble with these guys, and Lena offered to help. Offered to help with my money. Nate, you have to understand. I never meant for this to happen. Lena was lonely, and we were just talking at first. Save it, Eddie. Save it, Eddie. I don't want to hear your justification. Stuck up to leave, but Eddie grabbed my arm. Nate, wait. I know you're pissed, but I need your help. These guys who are after me, they're dangerous. If I don't pay them by Wednesday, they're going to hurt me. Really hurt me. Down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. You should have thought about that before you decided to screw my wife and steal my money. I smoothed out. In the hospital parking lot, I called Patricia Hendricks and left a message about Eddie's plan to access our joint accounts. Then I called my bank and put a freeze on all joint accounts pending the divorce proceedings. By the time Lena figured out what I'd done, it would be too late for her to help Eddie with his loan shark problem. I drove home feeling better than I had in days. Eddie's accident had been more satisfying than I'd expected, and knowing that he was in debt to dangerous people made it even better. But the best part was knowing that I'd just cut off his access to my money. Let him figure out how to pay out $50,000 in gambling debts on his own. That evening, Lena called me, screaming. What did you do to the bank accounts? I tried to transfer money to help Eddie, and they said the accounts were frozen. I protected my assets, I said calmly, just like my lawyer advised. Eddie's in the hospital. He needs help. Eddie's in the hospital because his brakes failed. That's what happens when you don't maintain your car properly. Someone sabotaged his car. Someone tried to end him. That's a serious accusation, Lena. Have you called the police? We can't call the police. Why not? Silence on the other end of the line. Lena, why can't you call the police? Because Eddie owes money to some people. And if the police start investigating, it might make things worse for him. What kind of people? I can't tell you that. Then I can't help you. Nathan, please. I know you hate us right now, but Eddie could get seriously hurt if he doesn't pay these people back. Then maybe he shouldn't have borrowed money from loan sharks. How did you... She stopped herself. How did I know they were loan sharks? Lucky guess. I hung up and poured myself a bourbon. Outside, it was getting dark, and I could see the lights coming on in my neighbors' houses. Normal people living normal lives, having normal problems. I wasn't normal anymore. I was something else now, something harder and more calculating, and I was just getting started. Monday morning brought a call from Patricia Hendricks. Mr. Pierce, your wife's attorney called. They want to meet to discuss a settlement. Already? It's only a fuss. I think they sent me a lot of different covered. Already, it's always making good. And so she said, I just want to meet to me a good. Unless it's only been a week. Occasionally, Mrs. Pierce is eager to resolve this quickly. Her attorney mentioned something about needing immediate access to marital assets. I smiled. Eddie's loan shark problem was making Lena desperate. Set up the meeting, I said, but I want to know exactly why she's in such a hurry. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. That gave me 2 days to do some investigating. I called Sarah Chen at Lena's office. Sarah, it's Nathan Pierce. I need another favor. What kind of favor? I need to know if Lena's been acting strange at work. More stressed than usual, making personal calls, that kind of thing. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Mr. Pierce, Lena hasn't been to work since Thursday. What do you mean? Called in sick Thursday and Friday, and she hasn't shown up today. Her boss is furious. She was supposed to present a major campaign to a client this morning, and she just didn't show. Has anyone tried to reach her? I've called her cell phone 12 times. It goes straight to voicemail. After I hung up, I drove downtown to Eddie's apartment building. His BMW was in the shop getting repaired, but I wanted to see if he and Lena were still staying there. The doorman, a friendly guy named Miguel who I'd talked to before, recognized me. Hey, Mr. Pierce, you here to see Eddie? Is he upstairs? Nah, he checked out yesterday. Took all his stuff and left. Didn't even give notice to the landlord. What about the woman who was with him? Auburn hair, green eyes. She left with him. They loaded up a U-Haul truck and took off. So Eddie and Lena had run. The question was whether they'd run together or whether Eddie had taken off and left Lena behind. I drove to Lena's office and found Sarah in the parking lot, smoking a cigarette and looking stressed. Any word from Lena? I asked. Nothing. And her boss is talking about firing her. She's supposed to be here for a client meeting in an hour. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you think Lena and Eddie ran off together? Sarah took a long drag on her cigarette. Mr. Pierce, I think your wife got in over her head with something, and now she's scared. What makes you say that? Last Tuesday, before everything happened, she got a phone call that really upset her. She was crying afterward, and she kept saying something about not having that kind of money. Did you hear who called her? No, but after she hung up, she called Eddie. I heard her say, "We need to talk. This is getting out of hand." I thanked Sarah and drove home to think. If Eddie had run off, leaving Lena behind, she was in serious trouble. The loan sharks would come looking for their money, and if Eddie wasn't around to pay them, they might decide to collect from his girlfriend instead. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a bigger part of me remembered her kissing Eddie in front of me, remembered her plan to steal my money, remembered 22 years of marriage thrown away for a few months of excitement. Let her figure it out on her own. Wednesday afternoon, I met with Patricia and Lena's lawyer, a nervous-looking man named David Kellerman, who kept checking his phone. "Where's your client?" Patricia asked. "Mrs. Pierce is indisposed today. She's authorized me to negotiate on her behalf." "What kind of settlement is she looking for?" Kellerman opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. "Mrs. Pierce is willing to give up her claim to the house and to Mr. Pierce's retirement accounts in exchange for a lump sum payment of $75,000. Patricia and I looked at each other. Based on our assets, Lena was entitled to at least twice that amount. Why is she willing to take so much less than she's entitled to? Patricia asked. Kellerman shifted uncomfortably. My client has pressing financial obligations. She needs immediate access to cash. What kind of pressing financial obligations? I'm not at liberty to discuss that. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Mr. Kellerman, your client committed adultery, abandoned the marital home, and attempted to steal money from joint accounts to give to her lover. And now she wants my client to pay her $75,000 to go away? That seems like a very generous offer for someone in her position. My client is prepared to be reasonable. Your client is desperate, Patricia interrupted. The question is why? Kellerman's phone buzzed. He looked at it and pushed the managers looking at these ways developed. Kellerman's new children. Mr. Kellerman, Lena tried buth. Mr. Kellerman, $5,000. He looked at it and went pale. I need to make a phone call, he said, stepping out of the room. Through the glass door, I could see him pacing and talking frantically. When he came back, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. My client has authorized me to accept $50,000, he said. 40, I said. Mr. Pierce, that's hardly fair. 35, and that's my final offer. Take it or leave it. Kellerman made another phone call. When he came back, he nodded. My client accepts. Patricia drew up the papers, and I signed them. Just like that, I was divorced. 22 years of marriage dissolved for $35,000 and a signature on a legal document. Where should we send the check? Patricia asked. Kellerman gave her an address I didn't recognize. Not Eddie's apartment, not our house, but a motel on the outskirts of town. After Kellerman left, Patricia and I sat in her office, reviewing the agreement. That was remarkably easy, she said. Almost suspiciously easy. Lena's in trouble. She needs cash fast, and she can't get it anywhere else. What kind of trouble? I told her about Eddie's gambling debts and the loan sharks. Mr. Pierce, if your ex-wife is involved with dangerous people, you might want to consider taking a vacation, at least until this blows over. I'm not running away from loan sharks. I'm not suggesting you run away. I'm suggesting you make yourself scarce until the situation resolves itself. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, looking at the divorce papers and thinking about Patricia's advice. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to disappear for a while. I'd always wanted to see Europe. I had some money saved up, and now I had a house with no mortgage and no wife to spend my paycheck. Maybe it was time for a new adventure. I called Jessica and told her about the divorce. Is it really over? She asked. It's really over. How do you feel? Relieved, mostly. And free. Dad, are you going to be okay? I'm going to be fine, kiddo. Better than fine. What are you going to do now? I'm thinking about taking a trip. Maybe to Paris. I've always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. That sounds amazing, Dad. You deserve a vacation. After I hung up, I started researching flights to Paris. I found one leaving Friday morning, which gave me 2 days to get my affairs in order. I called my boss and told him I was taking extended leave. I called my neighbor and asked her to keep an eye on the house. I called my bank and arranged for international access to my accounts. And then, I did something I'd been thinking about for days. I called the police and reported that I'd overheard a conversation about loan sharking and illegal gambling. I gave them Eddie's name and description, and I mentioned that he'd been seen with dangerous-looking men in the downtown area. I didn't mention Lena. Let the police figure out the rest. Friday morning, I drove to the airport with a single suitcase and a feeling of freedom I hadn't experienced in 20 years. No wife to check in with, no schedule to keep, no one to answer to but myself. The plane took off at 10 a.m., and I watched the city disappear below me. Somewhere down there, Lena was probably still hiding in that motel, waiting for $35,000 and hoping Eddie would come back to save her. But Eddie was long gone, and the loan sharks were getting impatient, and the police were starting to ask questions about illegal gambling operations. I settled back in my seat and ordered a bourbon. For the first time in a week, I felt like smiling. Revenge, I'd learned, was a dish best served with a side of French fries and a view of the Eiffel Tower. Epilogue: Paris Dawn. 6 months later, I was sitting at a sidewalk cafe in Montmartre, reading an email from Jessica on my tablet. She was doing well in school, had a new boyfriend, and was planning to visit me in Paris over spring break. The waiter, a friendly guy named Pierre who'd gotten used to my terrible French, brought me my usual coffee and croissant. Bonjour, Nathan. Comment allez-vous? Très bien, merci. It was a beautiful morning in Paris. The sun was shining, the tourists were starting to emerge from their hotels, and I had nowhere to be and nothing to worry about. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize, but with a U.S. area code. Hello? Nathan? It's me. She sounded terrible, tired, defeated, desperate. Hello, Lena. I need your help. Do you? Eddie's gone. He took the money and disappeared. The people he owed, they think I know where he is. Do you? No, I haven't heard from him in 4 months, but they don't believe me. I sipped my coffee and watched a young couple walking hand in hand down the cobblestone street. That sounds like a problem. Nathan, please. I know you hate me, but I'm scared. These people, they're dangerous. You should call the police. I can't call the police. If I do, they'll find out about the money Eddie stole, and I'll go to jail too. What money did Eddie steal? Silence on the other end of the line. Lena? He took money from some accounts. Business accounts. A lot of money. How much money? $200,000. I almost choked on my coffee. Jesus, Lena. I didn't know he was going to do it. He said he just needed to borrow it, that he'd pay it back before anyone noticed. But they noticed. The FBI noticed. They have a warrant out for Eddie's arrest, and they think I helped him. Did you? She gave him access to some client accounts at work, but I thought he was just borrowing the money. I set down my coffee cup and looked out at the Paris morning. Somewhere in this beautiful city, people were falling in love, creating art, living their dreams. And here I was, talking to my ex-wife about FBI warrants and stolen money. Lena, why are you calling me? Because you're the only person who might help me. Because I know I hurt you, but I'm hoping you might still care enough to what? To send you money? To come back and save you? I don't know. Something. Anything. I was quiet for a long moment, thinking about 22 years of marriage, about anniversary dinners and Sunday mornings, and all the small moments that make up a life together. And then, I thought about her kissing Eddie in front of me, about her plan to steal my money, about her choosing excitement over loyalty. Lena? Yes? I want you to listen to me very carefully. Okay, you made your choice. You chose Eddie over me, excitement over stability, selfishness over family. You threw away 22 years of marriage for a few months of fun with a man who turned out to be a criminal. Nathan, I'm not finished. You humiliated me in front of our friends. You tried to steal my money, and you put our daughter through heck. And now you want me to save you from the consequences of your choices. Please, the answer is no, Lena. I'm not coming back. I'm not sending you money. I'm not saving you from the mess you made. But I have nowhere else to turn. You should have thought about that before you decided to blow up our marriage. I could hear her crying on the other end of the line. Nathan, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I made terrible mistakes, but I'm begging you. Goodbye, Lena. Hung up and turned off my phone. Pierre came over with the check. Everything okay, monsieur? Everything's perfect, I said in my terrible French. I paid the check, left a generous tip, and walked down the hill toward the Seine. The morning was getting warmer, and the city was coming alive around me. Street musicians were setting up on corners, vendors were opening their flower stalls, and the cafes were filling up with people starting their day. I had no schedule to keep, no one to check in with, No problems that couldn't wait until tomorrow. I had a comfortable apartment near the Pantheon, enough money to live well, and a daughter who loved me. I had, for the first time in 22 years, complete freedom. At the river, I stopped and leaned against the stone wall, watching the boats go by. My phone buzzed with another call from the same number, but I didn't answer it. Lena had made her choice, and now she would live with the consequences. Eddie had made his choice too, and somewhere in the world, he was probably looking over his shoulder and wondering when the FBI would catch up with him. But I had made a different choice. I had chosen to walk away from the drama, the anger, and the need for revenge. I had chosen to build a new life in a place where no one knew my story, where I could be whoever I wanted to be. As I walked back up the hill toward my apartment, I thought about calling Jessica later to tell her about the conversation with her mother. But then, I decided against it. Jessica was building her own life now, and she didn't need to be burdened with her mother's problems. Instead, I would call her tonight to talk about her upcoming visit, about the places we would see together, about the future we were building. Because that's what you do when you're free. You stop looking backward and start looking forward. You stop being a victim and start being the hero of your own story. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well.